I never thought I would step into my ex-girlfriend's family mansion again, but on a warm Saturday evening in June, there I was. I stood in the middle of their massive garden, surrounded by roses and soft yellow lights, trying to calm my racing heart. Sarah had invited me to her engagement party. Even saying that in my head felt strange. We had broken up 8 months ago, yet she wanted me there to show we were both adults who had moved on. I told myself I was strong enough to handle it. I wanted to prove that I was over her. The party looked exactly like I imagined. Expensive champagne flowed like water. People wore designer clothes and laughed loudly. A string quartet played near a large fountain, filling the air with slow, elegant music. Everything looked perfect, polished, and unreal. Sarah looked happy beside her new fiancé, Christopher. He was an investment banker, confident and sharp, wearing a watch that probably cost more than my car. I shook his hand, smiled, and told myself none of this bothered me. I escaped toward the rose garden where it was quieter and pulled out my phone. I called my younger sister, Maya. She had just been accepted into the graduate program she had dreamed about for years. Hearing her voice made me smile for real. I told her how proud I was of her and reminded her how hard she had worked. We laughed about the night she almost quit and how I drove 4 hours just to talk her out of it. That memory still felt good. It reminded me who I was before heartbreak. That was when I heard a voice. It was soft, almost like someone was speaking to themselves. I looked through the rose bushes and saw Elena, Sarah's mother. She sat alone on a stone bench holding a glass of champagne, watching the party from far away. She looked like someone watching a movie they did not belong in. Then she spoke again, quiet, but clear enough for me to hear. Maybe I had a lover like you. My body froze. Maya was still talking on the phone, but her voice faded into noise. I stared at Elena, sitting there alone, sadness written all over her face. My chest tightened. I told Maya I had to go and ended the call. For a moment, I just stood there, unsure what to do. Elena had always been kind to me when I dated Sarah. She asked about my architecture studies and remembered small details about my life that even Sarah sometimes forgot. But we never really talked. It was always polite smiles and short conversations at family dinners. Tonight felt different. She looked lonely in a way that hurt to see. I walked around the rose bushes and cleared my throat so I would not scare her. She looked up quickly, panic flashing in her eyes like she had been caught doing something wrong. Then she forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Michael," she said softly, "I thought you had already left." Quote, "I was about to," I replied, sitting on the bench and leaving space between us. "It's a beautiful party." She looked toward the terrace where people danced and laughed. Yes, Sarah planned everything perfectly. We sat in silence. The music drifted toward us, slow and distant. I noticed her hand shaking slightly as she held her glass. "I heard what you said," I told her gently. "I'm sorry for listening, but I did." Her face went pale. She set the glass down and stared at her hands. "I didn't think anyone was there." "You don't need to be embarrassed," I said. "It's okay." She let out a small laugh, but it sounded bitter. "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one falling apart at your daughter's engagement party." "What's wrong?" I asked. "Everything looks perfect." "Exactly," she whispered. "Everything looks perfect." I looked at her and understood, but it doesn't feel right. She turned to me, really looking at me now, like she was trying to decide if I could understand her. "How did you know?" "I heard how you talked to your sister," she continued quietly. "There was so much warmth in your voice, real care. I can't remember the last time someone spoke to me like that." I hesitated before asking, "What about your husband?" "Richard?" She shook her head slowly. "We haven't had a real conversation in years. We talk about schedules, events, business. Never about feelings, never about dreams." "That sounds lonely," I said. "It is," she replied softly, "more than you can imagine." The noise of the party faded away. It felt like the world had narrowed down to this bench and this moment. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. "Do you ever think about starting over?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "At my age, people would think I lost my mind." "Maybe you're just waking up," I said. "There's a difference between breaking down and breaking free." She stared at me, eyes wide, fear and hope mixing together. And what would choosing differently even look like? I did not have an answer, but as I looked at her, sitting there in the shadows of a perfect life, I felt something shift between us. Something neither of us expected, something that made it impossible to walk away. I went home that night with Elena's words echoing in my head. The image of her sitting alone on that stone bench would not leave me. I told myself it was just concern, just empathy, nothing more. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. Something had been opened between us, and once opened, it could not be ignored. The next morning was Sunday. Sunlight filled my apartment, but I barely noticed it. I made coffee and stood by the window, staring out without really seeing anything. My phone buzzed on the counter. I expected it to be Maya calling back, worried about me hanging up so suddenly. Instead, it was a message from an unknown number. "This is Elena. I hope it's okay that I got your number from Sarah's phone. Would you like to meet for coffee sometime this week? Somewhere quiet." My hand shook as I read it. I did not overthink my reply. I knew if I did, fear would win. "Yes," I typed back, "I'd like that." We met on Tuesday morning at a small cafe across town. It was the kind of place with chipped mugs and soft music, where nobody rushed and nobody asked questions. I arrived early and chose a table near the window. When Elena walked in, I almost did not recognize her. She wore jeans and a simple blue sweater. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, lighter, like she had stepped out of a role she had been playing for years. "I already ordered you a latte," I said as she sat down. "Sarah used to say you like extra foam." She smiled gently. "You remember small details. That matters." We talked for 2 hours without noticing the time. She told me about her life before marriage, how she worked as an art curator in Boston, how she loved discovering new artists and helping them find their voice. She told me how she met Richard at a fundraiser and was swept into his world of money and expectations. By the time she realized she was unhappy, years had passed. Children, responsibilities, and a perfect image trapped her. "One day," she said quietly, stirring her coffee, "I looked at myself in the mirror while setting up for another dinner party. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. I cared more about matching napkins than about anything real." I told her about my own struggles. How I almost failed architecture school because I was so focused on impressing others that I forgot why I loved design. How breaking up with Sarah hurt, but also freed me to ask myself who I really was. After that morning, we kept meeting. Twice a week at first, then more. Always at different cafes. Always places where nobody knew us. She asked about my projects, and I found myself speaking with excitement I usually kept hidden. She understood immediately, connecting architecture to art in ways that surprised me. "You should go back to curating," I told her one day. "You still love it." "I'm 62, she said with a nervous laugh. "Who would hire me?" "Nobody has to," I replied. "You could volunteer. Museums always need people who actually care." The next week, she told me she had contacted a contemporary art center downtown. They were thrilled to have her help organize their fall exhibition. The change in her was immediate. She started dressing for herself, not for appearances. She sent me photos of paintings, asking my opinion. We talked for hours about why certain art felt alive and others felt empty. In August, I helped her set up the exhibition. We spent long days adjusting lighting and arguing playfully about where pieces should go. Working beside her felt natural, easy. At one point, she caught me watching her. "Stop staring," she said, smiling. "I'm observing," I replied. "That's what artists do." She laughed, and the sound stayed with me. One afternoon, sitting on the museum floor during a break, she asked, "Why are you doing this? Spending so much time with me?" "Because I want to," I said honestly. "Because you matter to me." She went quiet. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "You know that." "I know," I said, and I did. The exhibition opened in September. Elena glowed as she spoke about each piece. Richard showed up briefly, shook hands, then left for a business call. I saw the disappointment on her face when he walked away. Later, when everyone was gone, she sat down and started crying. I put my arm around her, and she leaned into me. It felt right in a way that scared me. "I'm falling in love with you. I said quietly before I could stop myself. She looked up, eyes wide. Michael, you can't. Too late. Quote. She touched my face, trembling. This is impossible. Maybe, I said, but it's real. She kissed me then, soft, careful. When we pulled apart, she was crying again. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and I don't know what to do. I knew from that moment that nothing would ever be simple again, and yet I also knew I could not walk away. The weeks after that kiss felt unreal, like we had stepped into a different world where time moved faster and slower at the same time. Elena and I were careful. We met in quiet places, small parks, empty cafes during off hours. We texted using an app she downloaded just for us. Hiding felt wrong, but we both knew the truth coming out too soon would hurt people we cared about. Still, no matter how careful we were, what we felt kept growing. We talked about everything. Her childhood memories, my dreams of designing buildings that made people feel something. We laughed easily, but there was always an edge of fear underneath it all, like we both knew this could fall apart at any moment. Then, one morning in October, everything shifted. I was sitting alone in a coffee shop near my apartment when Sarah walked in. My heart dropped the second I saw her. She spotted me right away and walked over with a polite smile. Hey, Michael, she said. Mind if I sit? Sure, I replied, forcing myself to stay calm. She ordered tea and sat across from me. For a moment, we talked about nothing important. Work, the weather, normal things. Then her expression changed. I've been meaning to talk to you, she said. Something strange is going on with my mom. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? She's different, Sarah said. She's never home. She's always at that museum. She's dressing differently, acting defensive when I ask questions. She stirred her tea slowly. I know this sounds crazy, but I think she might be having an affair. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted bitter. I kept my face still. Why would you think that? Because she looks like someone in love, Sarah said, and it's definitely not with my dad. Quote, I wanted to say Elena's happiness mattered more than appearances. I wanted to defend her, but I couldn't, not without destroying everything. Maybe she's just happy doing work she loves again, I said carefully. Maybe, Sarah replied, but she did not sound convinced. I just hope she's being smart. Our family reputation matters, especially with my dad's business. After she left, my hands were shaking. I texted Elena immediately. We need to talk. She met me later that afternoon at a quiet park. The moment she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. Sarah suspects something, I said. She thinks you're having an affair. Elena went pale. What did you tell her? Nothing, I said. But we can't keep doing this forever, hiding, waiting. She looked down at her hands. I know, I'm just scared. Of what? Of hurting Sarah. Of what Richard will do. Of what people will say. I took her hands. I love you, Elena. I want a real relationship, not secret meetings. Tears filled her eyes. I love you too, but I need time, please. How much time? I asked. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe we should stop seeing each other for a while, just until I figure things out. The words hit hard. You want to end this? Quote, not end, she said quickly. Pause. I stood up, hurt and angry. Take your time, but don't expect me to wait forever while you decide if I'm worth the risk. I walked away before she could respond. 3 weeks passed with no word from her. Every day felt heavier than the last. I buried myself in work, staying late, taking extra projects. Nothing helped. My sister Maya called one night. She knew something was wrong the moment I answered. I met someone, I told her. It's complicated. How complicated? She asked. She's older, she's married, and she's my ex-girlfriend's mother. There was a long silence. Then Maya said, Michael, are you serious? I told her everything. She listened quietly. Do you love her? She asked. Yes. Does she love you? I think so, but she's scared. Of course she is, Maya said. But you deserve someone who chooses you. I know, I said. But when something feels this real, you don't just walk away. November came cold and gray. One afternoon at the grocery store, I ran into Richard. Elena's husband. Michael, he said warmly. Good to see you. We talked for a minute, then he surprised me. Elena's been different lately, he said. More alive, passionate again. That's good, I replied quietly. It is, he said. Honestly, I haven't seen her like this in years. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. She needs someone who listens to her. I've been too focused on work. The guilt crushed me. Richard was not cruel, just distant. A few days later, I got a call from a woman at the Arts Council. Elena had recommended me for a community gallery project. Even while we were not speaking, she was still supporting me. That was when I realized something. No matter how scared she was, she had not let go of me. And I knew this story was far from over. December arrived quietly, bringing cold mornings and long nights. Elena and I still were not officially back together, but our lives kept pulling us toward the same place. The community gallery project moved forward quickly, and I spent most of my days working on designs. Every wall, every window, every open space felt like a conversation I wanted to have with her. Then, one afternoon, everything collided. I was presenting my initial designs at the Arts Council building when the door opened, and Elena walked in. I froze mid-sentence. She stopped too, surprise flashing across her face. For a moment, neither of us moved. The woman leading the meeting smiled. You two know each other, right? Yes, Elena said calmly, taking a seat far from me. We've met. I finished my presentation, aware of her presence but unable to look at her. When it was her turn to speak, she surprised me again. The designs are good, she said carefully. But Michael is capable of more. He doesn't just design spaces, he designs experiences. I think he's holding back. Her words stung because they were true. After the meeting, I caught her in the hallway. Can we talk? Not here, she said, glancing around. Please. She led me into an empty stairwell. We stood on different steps, distance heavy between us. You were right, she said quietly. About everything. About what? About me needing to choose instead of hiding. She took a shaky breath. I asked Richard for a separation. My heart stopped. You did what? I told him the truth, she said quickly, that I haven't been happy for years, that we've been living like roommates. I said I needed to figure out who I am outside of being his wife. I stared at her. How did he take it? Quote, he wasn't surprised, she said. He's been seeing someone else for years, a woman he met through business. He was almost relieved. Before I could respond, her phone rang. She looked at the screen and went pale. It's Sarah, she whispered. She saw us come in here. She's outside. Do you want me with you? I asked. No, she said firmly. I need to do this myself. She squeezed my hand once and walked away. I stayed in the stairwell, heart pounding, waiting. After what felt like forever, my phone buzzed. She's furious, Elena texted. She says I'm destroying the family. Quote, you're being honest, I replied. That matters. That night, Elena showed up at my apartment. She looked broken. I pulled her inside and held her while she cried. We fell asleep on the couch, clinging to each other like the world outside did not exist. But the world did not stop. Word spread fast. People whispered. Some of my colleagues stopped calling. Others made quiet jokes. One friend asked me if it was worth losing respect over. Yes, I said without hesitation. Elena lost even more. Friends stopped answering her calls. Her country club quietly suggested she leave. Sarah refused to speak to her. One afternoon, I found Elena sitting alone in the unfinished gallery, staring at bare walls. She won't talk to me, Elena said when I sat beside her. She told me she doesn't have a mother anymore. I wrapped my arm around her. She's hurting. Give her time. I hope you're right, she whispered. That same week, a man named Marcus Wellington came to see her. Wealthy, polished, someone from her old life. I watched from across the room as they spoke. Later, Elena told me the truth. He proposed, she said flatly, marriage. The word hit hard. He offered stability, she continued, respect, a way back to a life that makes sense to everyone. "And what did you say?" I asked. "That I needed time." I felt anger rise. "So you're considering it?" "I'm scared," she said. "I've lost so much already." I left without another word. 5 days passed in silence. Then there was a press conference. Elena stood in front of reporters, strong and confident, announcing a major expansion of her foundation. When a reporter asked about her personal life, she answered without flinching. "I spent years living the way others expected," she said. "Now I'm choosing to live honestly." People applauded. Afterward, she found me in the hallway. "I told Marcus no," she said. "I choose you." I searched her face. "Why?" "Because you don't offer escape," she said. "You offer truth." I pulled her into a kiss, right there where anyone could see, and for the first time we stopped hiding. But I knew one thing for sure: the hardest part was still coming. 2 months later, the gallery opened. It was a cold afternoon, but the space felt alive. Children from nearby schools filled the room, their eyes wide as they stared at paintings and sculptures they had never seen before. Their laughter echoed off the walls. Elena stood near the center of the gallery, watching them with quiet wonder. "That could have been me," she whispered to me, "if I'd had something like this when I was young." "But you're giving it to them now," I said. "That matters." She smiled, but I could still see the weight she carried. Choosing us had not erased the consequences. Sarah still had not spoken to her. Some days were easier than others. Some days were heavy. Near the end of the opening, I saw Elena freeze. I followed her gaze and felt my heart jump. Sarah stood near the entrance. She looked unsure, like she might turn around and leave at any second. Elena's hand trembled in mine. I squeezed it gently and stepped back, giving them space. From across the room, I watched them talk. Sarah's arms were crossed at first, her face tight with anger and pain. Elena listened. She did not interrupt. She did not defend herself. She just stood there and took it all. Then Sarah started crying. Elena reached out slowly, like she was afraid her daughter might pull away. Instead, Sarah collapsed into her arms. Elena held her, tears streaming down her own face. When Sarah left, Elena came back to me, shaking. "She wants to have dinner next week," she said through tears. "She says she doesn't understand us, but she wants to try." "That's more than enough," I said softly. "That's hope." That night, after everyone left, we stayed in the gallery. The lights were dim. The space was quiet. Elena took my hand and led me to the center of the room. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For stepping closer that night in the garden," she replied. "When you could have walked away, for seeing me when I had forgotten who I was." I pulled her into my arms. "Thank you for being brave." She rested her head against my chest. "This is still scary," she admitted. "I know," I said, "but we're not pretending anymore." Quote, "We stood there, surrounded by art and silence and everything we had built together. For the first time, the future did not feel like something to fear. It felt like something we were choosing. And I knew that whatever came next would change us forever." Part 5. The gallery opened on a cold afternoon, but inside, it felt warm and alive. Kids from nearby schools filled the space, their voices bouncing off the walls as they moved from one piece of art to another. Some of them stared at the paintings like they were discovering a new world. Elena stood in the middle of it all, watching quietly, her eyes shining. "That could have been me," she whispered, "if I had something like this when I was young." "But you're giving it to them now," I said. "That matters more." She nodded, but I could still see the weight she carried. Choosing me did not make everything easy. Sarah still had not spoken to her. Friends were still distant. Some days, Elena was strong. Other days, the loneliness hit her hard. Near the end of the opening, I noticed Elena suddenly stop moving. Her hand tightened around mine. I followed her gaze and felt my heart jump. Sarah was standing near the entrance. She looked unsure, like she might leave at any second. Elena's breathing changed. I squeezed her hand once, then gently stepped back to give them space. From across the room, I watched them talk. Sarah's arms were crossed at first. Her face was tight with anger and pain. Elena listened without interrupting. She did not defend herself. She just stood there and took every word. Then, Sarah started crying. Elena reached out slowly, almost afraid her daughter would pull away. Instead, Sarah collapsed into her arms. Elena held her, tears streaming down her own face. The sight made my chest ache in a good way. When Sarah left, Elena walked back to me, shaking. "She wants to have dinner next week," she said through tears. "She said she doesn't understand us, but she wants to try." "That's hope," I said softly. "That's enough." That evening, after everyone was gone, the gallery was quiet. The lights were low, the city hummed outside. Elena took my hand and led me to the center of the room. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For stepping closer that night in the garden," she said, "when you could have walked away. For seeing me when I had forgotten who I was." I pulled her close. "Thank you for being brave, for choosing yourself." She rested her head against my chest. "I'm still scared," she admitted. "I know," I said, "but we're not hiding anymore." We stood there surrounded by art and possibility. For the first time, the future did not feel like something to fear. It felt like something we were choosing together. Life did not suddenly become easy after that night in the gallery. If anything, it became more honest. And honesty has a way of demanding strength every single day. Elena moved out of the mansion in early January. Not into another grand home, but into a quiet apartment near the river. It was smaller than any place she had lived in decades. The furniture was simple. The walls were bare at first. But for the first time, the space felt like hers. The first night she stayed there, I helped her unpack boxes. We found old photographs she had not seen in years. Pictures of her in her 20s, standing in museums, smiling with paint on her hands. "I remember her," she said softly, holding one photo. "I liked her." "You didn't lose her," I said. "You just buried her for a while." She leaned into me, and for a moment, everything felt calm. Sarah kept her distance at first. Dinner turned into short coffee meetings. Coffee turned into longer conversations. They were awkward, emotional, sometimes painful. But Elena showed up every time. She listened. She did not push. She did not defend herself. She just stayed honest. One night, after Sarah left, Elena sat quietly on the couch. "She asked me if I love you," Elena said. "And what did you say?" "That I do," she replied. "That loving you helped me learn how to love myself again." I reached for her hand. "That must have been hard." "It was," she said. But it was true. The architecture community never fully stopped whispering. Some doors stayed closed. Some people never called again. But new doors opened too. The community gallery led to other projects. Real projects. Ones that mattered. Spaces built for people, not status. One evening, after a long day at work, Elena and I walked along the river. The city lights reflected on the water. She stopped suddenly and turned to me. "Do you ever regret this?" she asked. "Choosing me, choosing us." I thought about it honestly. The judgment, the tension, the hard conversations. "No," I said. "Not even on the hardest days." She smiled, eyes shining. "Neither do I." Spring came slowly. The gallery became a place people talked about. Kids returned with their parents. Schools asked for programs. Elena stood in front of rooms again, speaking with confidence and fire. Watching her, I felt proud in a way I had never felt before. One afternoon, as we locked up the gallery, she looked at me and laughed. "You know," she said, "this all started because you stepped closer instead of walking away." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "I'm glad you did," she said, "because I don't think I would have survived another year of pretending." She pulled me closer, resting her forehead against mine. "Maybe I didn't need a perfect life," she whispered. "Maybe I just needed someone who saw me." I kissed her gently. And I needed someone who reminded me why choosing love is always worth the risk. We stood there as the sun dipped below the buildings, the gallery quiet behind us. Two people who had found something real in the most unexpected way. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. And for the first time in both our lives, that was more than enough.